Here on Flow FM, great to be speaking again with Sheep Producers Australia's Bonnie Skinner. How are you, Bonnie?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me again.
It is always a pleasure, and it is particularly satisfying to know that last time we spoke with you, where we had some concerns about, I guess, some panic in the market about foot and mouth disease, which we have to keep emphasising is not in Australia. The market seems to have calmed down a bit and back on the up for our sheep and our cattle producers.
That's right. It's really pleasing to see, and I think interesting to observe the effects that those sort of things can have on our markets and our prices. I think the thing that we're sort of talking about around our tables is keeping an eye on the inflationary pressures that might be coming from other markets, particularly our bigger ones like the US. And I think with sort of the changing global economy, that's what we have to be keeping our eye on the ball on. But certainly glad to see some of the panic settle down, that's for sure.
When you talk about the inflationary pressures, are you talking about, I guess, suppressed demand on the retail or on the restaurant and eating front when it comes to meat product?
Yeah, that's right. I think what we talk about, particularly amongst our producers and with some of our market analyst colleagues is, I think the US is a good example of where we saw earlier in the year a huge upswing in the retail and the sale of lamb products over there, certainly coming out of, during COVID. What we saw was a lot of people experimenting with lamb at home and having that time to really play around with different styles of cooking, different recipes, and saw those really impressive figures. That's sort of starting to cool off, it looks like, and we're conscious that there's going to be increased pressure on price of living, on wages, and lamb is a premium product. So we need to sort of be keeping our eye on the ball there, making sure that we're, offering customers a range of different opportunities to cook with lamb, and that includes secondary cuts. So it's something to keep an eye on for sure, and something we all talk about.
It follows a conversation actually I had earlier this week with Matt Dalgleish from Thomas Elder Markets about global meat consumption, and people don't realise, I suspect, that lamb isn't a big portion in some countries. It's pork in some Asian countries. In America, it's chicken. Even here in Australia, chicken's a big one. So there's a big share of meat consumption market to be had for lamb.
That's absolutely right. And I think we keep not just an eye on international markets with regards to consumption, but also domestically. And over time, we have seen that consumption kind of go down a little bit. And that's why there has been a bit of an emphasis on the marketing spend, particularly on the lamb side, to kind of grow that understanding around the diversity that is in lamb in terms of cooking and recipes that you can follow. But it is, different markets, as been pointed out by Matt. Different markets have different preferences for protein, but there's also, where we focus our efforts as a premium product on that kind of higher socioeconomic platforms where we want to see, more people experimenting with lamb there. But also broadening our horizons in some of our developing markets as well. So that there is a lot of opportunity out there to keep growing lamb domestically and internationally.
Yeah, it seems to me America's got KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Maybe we need AFL, Australian Fried Lamb, fast food outlets around Australia.
I think so. Bring on the lamb bacon and the lamb jerky and all of those other wonderful products that are in development.
Yeah, all jokes aside, we have also got this knock-on effect of, again, concern about being prepared for a foot and mouth or other biosecurity outbreak by having traceability when it comes to sheep. Some working groups seem to be being formed. Everyone's sort of working their way through not only how this will be implemented like it has been in beef, but also how the cost will be borne between producers and others.
Yeah, that's right. It's interesting, for these conversations around improving traceability have gone on for decades, but it's obviously never gotten to this point where there's been agreement reached by ministers to go forward with it. So there is a sort of plan to pull a process together at the moment to kind of flesh out that implementation plan and considerations. And you're right, it's not about just rolling out the cattle system. It's about looking at, where the improvements sort of need to be gained across the broad or the broader NLIS for other species as well, with a view to implementing other improvements. And in terms of who pays, that is a significant part of the conversation. When we talk about it, we sort of consider that it's got to be equitable and sustainable, whatever the cost-sharing arrangements are. Everybody sort of serves to gain benefits out of, world-leading traceability. So therefore, that sort of needs to be equitably split between, industry, state governments and federal governments, and not just funding the implementation of this system. I think that's when we cost it all up, the infrastructure and getting that put in, that's sort of the simpler part of the costings. The more complicated sort of areas go to things like sustainably providing services around, extension and awareness and training to make sure that people continue to interact with these systems in a compliant way, and that the producers are supported not during just implementation but beyond. So lots of questions there. It's kind of we're at the tip of the iceberg, and everyone's going to have to sort of start sorting through these logistics.
And when it comes to that, can we draw any insights from how it was done with beef, or are there different circumstances when it comes to sheep to how it was done with beef in terms of how the costs were borne?
I think it is a little bit different. I think we've kind of got two key learnings, or two key major rollouts to learn from. One is beef, and one, of course, is the rollout of electronic ID for sheep in Victoria. So, it's very similar, but I think long-standing issues that we've had with our traceability systems, particularly around things like property-to-property movements, and recording information on the NLIS database, what can we learn out of those rollouts that we can not repeat the mistakes, or make improvements in this new rollout? So it will be similar but different, and it points to, I guess, the broader reform measures that we proposed to government back in 2020 around sort of addressing the kind of long-standing issues with NLIS. So it won't be quite the drag and drop, because we want to make sure that we're not just implementing, status quo for sheep, but like I said, we're also looking to see how we can address other known issues in the system across other different species. So it's a really good opportunity to kind of really seriously address those.
Great stuff. Thanks again for catching up with us. Bonnie Skinner from Sheep Producers Australia. We'll catch you again soon.
Thanks very much.